Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation and for bringing this important issue in such a delicate time. Well, I mean, in a time of genocide, you cannot talk about security check, with all respect, so thank you for just mentioning this. Another issue which I had a lot of hesitation about, we talk about planning for. Are we really, as a Palestinian, had the chance to plan our homeland as, state, as a state in the making, or it is the margin of planning under the colonial system, which I think the second point is not the first point. But let us don't discuss the terminology and move into the chronology of planning in Palestine, the way it started and where we are at present. Maybe this is a short reminder what we are talking about. This is the map of the West Bank and the way Oslo, as an interim agreement, classify the Palestinian territory into area A, B, and C, where the Palestinian jurisdiction is limited to area B, which is only 18% of the West Bank. And if we look at the way since the Oslo Agreement, 1993-94, how the geopolitical changes affected the territory, and what was the result of 25 years of Oslo peace process, assuming that Oslo peace process is a one step toward statehood and toward Palestinian independent free Palestine. That was the working assumption of the Palestinians. That when I was young, working with political leadership during the time of the Oslo negotiation, even earlier, the Madrid conference, the Oslo negotiations, we had a real belief that we are moving into independence. By May 99, we'll be an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. And we were planning that by all means, including the physical, where the government offices will be allocated in East Jerusalem, parliament, presidential palace, etc. But reality changed since then. If we talk about the Palestinian built-up area, this is the layer of the Palestinian built-up area, which is fragmented by the Oslo peace process. This is where settlements are disturbing the contiguity of the Palestinian territory. And this is how the definition of a military zone by Israel covered the entire region of the Jordan Valley, including natural reserve declared by Israel, and then moving into a new, not so new, I mean, this is a mechanism that Israel used for almost 57, 58 years of the occupation, declaring a Palestinian private land into a state land because they could not cultivate this land for 3 years. And actually, Israel prevented them from doing that. So in a military zone, you cannot cultivate your own private land. And this is a mechanism where Israel managed to register more than 1.5 million dunam. Dunams is 1,000 square meters of a private Palestinian land into a state land. And if I try to compare this in 1967, there was only 5,000 dunam under the Jordanian rule of the West Bank as a state land. Then Area C is 60% of the West Bank, and you can see the layer of the separation wall, which is grabbing the Palestinian territory, and it's almost double of the boundary between West Bank and Israel proper. We talk about more than 700 kilometers of, a 9 meters wall or fence, which separate the Palestinians from Israel proper, but also it annexes de facto all settlement blocks. So this is the reality which been fostered after the Oslo Agreement. This is not a new reality. And if you look at this map where 70% of Area C is totally prohibited for Palestinian development, and this is, the way how the state land mechanism developed, where the state actually allocate these lands to the settlements. It's not been allocated for any purpose except for the colonial project. Today, we talk about almost 10% of the Jewish population of Israel live in settlements in the West Bank, almost 750,000, which is tripled, like 3 times more than it was in '94 with the Oslo peace process. Let's talk more about the Palestinian planning, Palestinian built-up areas. These are major cities in Palestine, including East Jerusalem. And you can see that in terms of population, East Jerusalem is the largest Palestinian city. But all these urban centers, they share one fact, that their municipal boundaries is so limited because it's been restricted by the Israelis for many years under the occupation. And even when the Oslo Agreement was signed, it's been shrinked by a certain percentage. And we see this in another slide, how Israel controlled the Palestinians, not based on territorial needs and expansion, but more on a demographic present. So Oslo was designed as an area A and B, based on a demographic consideration and definitely a security one. So these are the major cities with their total population 2016 and end of 2023. Talking about Area C, some of these urban centers, they have territory which is even more than 50% as prohibited areas for development. It is within municipal border, like Qalqilia, the first one that you can see, 50% of municipal Qalqilia is prohibited for Palestinian development. And you can see that in Tulkarem, El Bire, there's, could you imagine that municipality cannot issue a permit within its jurisdiction because it's been defined by the Israelis as an Area C, where the Palestinians have no right for planning or development. We move to Gaza. These are the Gaza Strip municipalities. And these are the main cities, the main urban, actually, refugee camps, which turn into cities, except Gaza, which, even the other cities like Khan Yunis, Rafah, were very small urban areas. And you can see there that with the Israeli the unilateral decision to withdraw from Gaza, it allows some expansion for the territory of the municipal, but still very small compared to the total population. Like take Gaza, for example, as a municipal Gaza, it's 55 square kilometer, but with the population, that's end of 2023. Before the war, during the war, or the estimation until end of 2023, we talk about 724,000, which is, by the way, almost similar to the example with no comparison with the settlers live in the occupied territories of the West Bank. This is again to compare the municipal boundaries of the Palestinian cities is still very tiny because the control of the land is in the hands of the Israel. That's why I was hesitant about the term, whether it is a planning or the margin of planning allowed or prohibited, allowed to the Palestinians in the West Bank. The Oslo Agreement was signed, and the way the West Bank was divided into Area A and B, and C was the dominant, which is 60%, as I mentioned. We Palestinians have to face a big dilemma, whether we have the right to plan for our communities and how these restrictions could affect our space. When Oslo was started, we couldn't find a Palestinian planner. This profession of a Palestinian planner was prohibited for many years. There is no such a thing. Palestinians cannot plan their urban space. It was in the hand of the military. Even within municipalities, Palestinian municipalities like El Bire, like Hebron, the military commanders were the mayors of these Palestinian cities. And the city engineer were Israeli. So Israeli engineers, Israeli architects were in charge of the Palestinian space, and it's clear that restriction and geopolitical, demographic consideration are the major element that they are trying to restrict the Palestinian development. About 77% of Palestinians live in urban areas, 71 in the West Bank, 87 in Gaza Strip. As I mentioned, these are refugee camps turned into urban centers. By 2030, there will be 5.3 million of the 6 million Palestinians will reside in urban areas. Yet, despite nominal land availability, 75% in the West Bank and 48% in the Gaza. We talk about an Israeli control over settlement, infrastructure, military zone, which leave only, a tiny possibility for the Palestinians to go beyond the area A and B. I mean, that's not, I mean, if we don't consider area C as the future of the Palestinian development, there's nothing to talk about Palestinian development at all. I mean, if you go to small villages, all in the West Bank, because of their small area B, they start to build high-rise, even 10, 12 floors for a village of 400, 300 people. That's beyond, any explanation for urbanism. Gaza was supposed to be, the agreement started with Gaza Jericho. Gaza was the first administrative center for the Palestinians, where the president, where the legislative council meeting took place, where the Palestinian parliament established, where the airport was opened in 1998, and then the seaport initial steps were put by the Dutch in 2000, but all were destroyed, demolished, even before this war. We talk about 2001, Israel demolished, actually they bombed the airport, the seaport, before, I mean, we talk about 25 years ago. Because there's no intention at all to create any normal conditions for the Palestinians to build their own state. West Bank started as a secondary center with the Oslo II agreement in '96, but the second intifada actually forced Palestinians to move their center from the Gaza to the West Bank because of the restriction, and when Arafat died, so in 2004, and Abu Mazen took over, so he turned West Bank into the major political center. I did a very, rapid exercise about planning, the way it started, and what was the main goal. I took all the master plans, all the development plans issued by the Palestinian Authority, and tried to, to make a classification based on their main goal, their plan specifications, and what is the focus. And the impediments created by the geopolitical reality in Palestine. So if we take the first period, 94 until 2000, the main goal was to establish a Palestinian Authority, institutions, ministry, a kind of sovereignty for government institutions. The intention was to create the state institutions. The plans between 98 until 2000, they are mainly development plans. They are mainly have to do with infrastructure and the how to support the functionality of the Palestinian ministries and Palestinians, governorates, and the Palestinian authorities established all over the West Bank. And the main, because of this, dependency on donor money and the way Oslo was crafted, that donors took responsibility on supporting the Palestinians. So they were mainly packages of projects, mainly infrastructure projects, submitted by the governments, by the Palestinian Authority to the different European, they are the big donors for the Palestinian Authority. And again, the focus is infrastructure. 2000 to 2006, there was a reconstruction of the PA, as I mentioned, that Israel bombed the seaport, the airport. That was during the second Intifada. And the second Intifada, there was a goal by the State of Israel, by even the left Labor Party, to dismiss the Palestinian Authority. So they bombed all jails, they bombed all Palestinian headquarters, they bombed all Palestinian ministries to prevent Palestinian Authority from, being part of the so-called, the second Intifada resistance and going against the occupation. So during this period, after we recover from this, big dismantling Palestinian institutions and Palestinian functions, there was a plan to reconstruct the Palestinian Authority, the rule of law, even police forces. I mean, none of the police stations exist. They were all destroyed by Israel, and people were hiding their affiliation with the security forces. They could not, create any law and order in Palestine. And then there was, at that time, because of the weakness of the Palestinian Authority, an increasing role of the private sector and the civil society in the development of Palestine. That's different from the first phase, where it was state-driven, and it was mainly to show to international community that we have sovereign right on our land, and we are going to establish an independent Palestinian state. Emergency, and since then, humanitarian support, humanitarian, I would say humanitarian aid replaced the development goal, and it's still the case until today. So donors at the beginning were focusing on development. Since 2000, the focus on humanitarian aid and emergency needs, and the main focus, guess what? Security forces, because Israel demanded that Palestinians should deliver in terms of security and subcontracting security. I need to move fast here. 2007, the reform and the statehood, we are back to the same agenda of statehood, enhancing integrity and institutional reforms. And there is a little shift here into different from the first phase, that we believed that we could, through through community engagement, we should balance the effort of statehood, and it need to go in parallel. So that's a new paradigm of planning that start to look at. And this is where the International Peace and Cooperation Center had to maneuver to get into what we are going to do with home demolition orders in Area C and displacement orders in Area C, whether we as a Palestinian community have the right to plan our spaces. Is this a recognition with the Israeli de facto sovereignty or control in Area C? Because there is 350 communities in Area C. Let me just move there is 350 communities, villages in Area C, and how we are going to cope with the home demolition orders, the displacement orders. So we initiated with the UK at that time, and then other countries in Europe and EU, Belgium, France. They joined the exercise of planning Palestinian communities in Area C. We talk about 208 communities fully in Area C and 189 that they are partially in Area C of the West Bank. And this is the way these these all the communities that we are talking about. We were at the beginning hesitant how to call this exercise. Is it an alternative planning? But Israel does not plan for the Palestinians. There is no master planning for any of these villages. So it's not an alternative planning. Is it an advocacy planning? We're trying to prevent home demolition. So how to call this and how to cope with the Israeli authorities that still they are in charge. So the exercise started with a small number of villages, around 12, and it's expanded between 2008 until 2020 to 78 villages in Area C. And we invented with a term with what we call a de facto planning, a de facto implementation. And UN Habitat was part of this exercise. I call it exercise because this is the community in charge. The Palestinian Authority was part of the technical political discussion, Ministry of Local Government, the Ministry of Civil Affairs, but the communities themselves, they were in charge. Many of these villages, they were ordered to come as, it's a military order to go to the Israeli civil administration to inform them about home demolition, about confiscation of a land. And they were telling us before this exercise, the meeting with the Israeli commanders, the military, it took 2-3 minutes to inform us we are going to do this and this. But with having them involved in the master planning, in the planning of their communities, they could argue about their needs and about how to defend their space and to prevent home demolition. These are all the 78 villages according to donors, according to the stages, but only, again, training and capacity building, working with community leaders, working with architects, with planners, within these communities was the main goal, because it's up to them to design and to plan their communities. It's also engaged with the public community awareness exercise, etc. These are an examples of these master plans. The Israelis were willing to discuss how big, how small, and usually it is trying to shrink the space for the Palestinians. And all these villages, we try to protect the built-up areas and to give the chance for a new development within 15, 20 years. Nothing beyond that. This is Harmala in the Bethlehem area, Al-Uqban also in the Hebron, in the Bethlehem area. And by the way, Israelis refused any clustering of these villages. There were neighboring villages. They insist they should be fully separated. No cluster planning for any of these villages. Qarawat Bani Hassan, these are what I mean by de facto planning, we know that the Israelis are not going to authorize these plans. Out of the 78 villages, only 6 were authorized. And the authorization is a problem for us. The moment that Israel will authorize these plans, meaning that they have to issue the permit. We don't want the Israelis to issue any permit, because they will not. And we know that. So de facto planning and de facto implementation is to create what we call a development plan for developing infrastructure and public institutions and public space for these communities. We initiate this as an organization with small projects like the Green Kindergarten in Yiftachel in the Jordan Valley, a playground in Fasail, public space in Al-Jib. But later on, the EU adopted this mechanism of what they call 18 months. They asked us a straightforward question: how long it's supposed to take in a normal condition, a master plan? The answer was 6 months with the awareness, community awareness, technical work, discussion, and approval. So they adopted an 18-month strategy where they took all the areas of master planning and they start to implement infrastructure projects by informing the Israelis about these projects without getting their permission. And the EU with other state members, they invested around 50 million euros between 2010, 12 until today, mainly in villages where they went through master planning. The IPCC did 78 master plans, but there's other private firms who, the total is 140 master plans out of the 350. But EU policy was to go to develop, to implement, a project within areas that they went through master planning. So this is, again, the different projects that the EU invested, and the implementing agency is the MDLF, is a municipal lending authority under the Palestinian Authority, but it is independent, and they were in charge of the implementation with the local government. This is like a great example of a village west of the wall. It is west of the wall, cut from the West Bank, Abdullah al-Yunus, in Jenin area. And you can see that the municipal headquarters, the government, or what we call the local council with the Palestinian flag, that's the model of creating a de facto implementation for the planning. This is another example from Ras al-Tire, and the Ras al-Tire in Qalqilia was one of the villages that they get an approval by the Israelis. This is the way it looked before, like in Nazel, south of Hebron, and this is also another village, it's got the approval. You can see people were living in caves, in a non-permanent structures. They were kicked out because there's, for the Israeli system, planning system, all these 350 villages, they don't exist. They are not even on the map. When Israel plan regional road, they don't see the Palestinian village. They will exist before the Israeli occupation in '67, but again, this is one example of the structure you can figure out from the master plan, from the aerial photo, and this is the reality. When the plan was approved, I'm talking about 10 years ago, 15 years ago actually. And you can see the permanent structures of this village. We try to apply the same methodology in East Jerusalem. In East Jerusalem, out of the 50,000 housing units, 22,000 is illegal. Why they are illegal? because none of the Palestinian neighborhoods in East Jerusalem had a detailed master plan that you can obtain a building permit. They don't exist. You don't have any building rights for any of the Palestinian neighborhoods. So Palestinians start to develop what they call, a de facto development, and an informal development by adding one room, one floor, and then a complete building. And it gets into almost more than 40% of the Palestinian development in East Jerusalem done informally. And at least 2/3 of these illegal houses, the 22,000 housing units, they had a demolition order. So with the communities in East Jerusalem, we tried to come with a similar exercise. In this case, we wanted to do an alternative planning because there is an Israeli restriction plans. The idea is to have a detailed plan with the building rights. And we started with almost 12 neighborhoods covering the entire West Bank. And the main indicators for us is to plan 3.5 square kilometers, and then to add around 8,900 new housing to the exist, which is the informal 5,800, and to have 30,000 inhabitants live currently in area under planning. That was the main, but this exercise, unfortunately, which have the element of advocacy, increasing densities, and having an expansion right, and developing public space and urban economy, and having a new neighborhood, didn't work. Israelis were technically accepting any discussion with them about the plan, but when it comes to the decision, they said this is political, and none of these plans were approved. And definitely in East Jerusalem, the Israel municipalities since 2000 had a very restricted monitoring system through daily aerial photo. If you just build a 1 meter wall, they will get to you tomorrow, the day after, because they have a very restricted, very intense control of the Palestinian territories in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem. These are examples of, the master plans that we prepared with the community. Wadi Qaddoum, which is like southeast of the old city, and this is a very crowded neighborhoods. This is the density, because of this informality. In 3-4 days, you have a house. And we try to work on also development, the expansion, etc. And it all done with the community. Even when we have a difficulty to organize a Palestinian community meetings at large, we were going from one house to another house, talking with the communities. And Palestinians invented the term that woman is the planner of the house, meaning where they will live, where they will study, and with whom they will get married. So they are the planners, the real planners of the Palestinian women. So we should not underestimate that. These are all examples of a master plan. They were all not even rejected. They were not even accepted for a submission. And then 2017, we planned an entire new neighborhood in Beit Hanina with 2,500 housing units. And this is the master plan for the DAStU, which is north of Jerusalem. This is the plan, IPC plan 2007. And again, how to cope with Palestinian needs, very simple. What you see to the left is the Israel, the Jerusalem master plan 2020, or the 2000 master plan. They adopted our plan in 2017, and you can see how even you look at the scheme of the development, how it's been fully adopted here by the master plan, which never been approved for political reasons. But what the Israelis did is to have what they call a neighborhood plan. They excluded this new area from the development, and they cut it out of the development for the Palestinians. That was a political decision that don't talk about expansion, talk about increasing density and fill in. So what to do? To surrender for the Israeli planning system? Definitely not. So the model of placemaking could support, the Palestinian urban rights, and we did this without any permission from the Israelis, developing green areas, community areas, and the right of the Palestinians to reclaim their urban rights again. This is one example of, in Beit Hanina North, which is the most urbanized neighborhood in Jerusalem, in East Jerusalem, and in a 7,500 square meter of a park. This is the way, and we did it with no Israeli permission, with the community, and it's funded by the EU, and it creates a new space for community. Now, Oren will argue that this is a new settler colonialism, similar to the settlement activities in the West Bank. East Jerusalem was not excluded. In the contrary, they developed a new pattern of a colonial project just to block the Palestinian national right and to minimize their urban rights. As you can see, Israel started to invest almost 1/4 of its budget in infrastructure road system in the occupied territories. This is one example of one road. It's road number 60. It is the tunnels connecting Beit Jala with Jerusalem, the Bethlehem district, and this road, just the expansion of it, recently, last year, it cost Israel 1 billion shekel, and this was in the budget of supporting settlement and settlement activities. Again, this is where 96 Netanyahu, as the prime minister, he approved this master, this settlement. It's Har Chuma, Har Shmuel. This is where the Oslo peace process collapsed because of the continuous building and rebuilding of settlements. And the neo-settler colonial project is the high-rise. This is a settlement. I mean, you will never think about it as a settlement. This is on main road to Hebron Road. It's called the Hebron Strip Road. It's a 3,500 housing units approved like 7-8 months ago, 170 hotel rooms. It's get the new model of I would call it neo-settler colonialism of 60 floors, 50 floors, and 40 floors. That's the average now for settlements and revitalization of existing settlements from 67 until now. Since Mr. Smotrich is becoming the minister at the Ministry of Defense in charge of the settlements and creating the directory for settlements, they did a master planning almost for every corner in the West Bank to grab more Palestinian land. This is the E1, which has been recently fully approved, and I think they are going to develop it with the 3,500 housing units again. You can see the old city in the red, the old city of Jerusalem. These are settlements, and they are Israelis moving from the separate outpost settlement, small spots, into a cluster of settlements. That's you can talk about how this is in Bisgat Ze'ev area. This is the old settlement, is to the right. You can see it to the right, and then this is the new expansion of the settlement, which will have a new Israeli settlers type, which is the ultra-Orthodox. And by the way, within metropolitan Jerusalem, 40% of the settlers are ultra-Orthodox. So out of the 600,000 settlers living in the Jerusalem greater area, 40% of them are settlers. They are ultra-Orthodox. Every corner is being planned. This is an example of the ultra-Orthodox Modi'in elite. 96 was established, and we talk about 100,000 settlers on ultra-Orthodox. It is just west of Ramallah. It is part of the greater Jerusalem. And you can see how the wall, separation wall, annexed the settlement, and how the another settlement, which is east of Bethlehem, Bitar elite, 85, and it have almost 90,000 ultra-Orthodox settlers. And you can see all the surrounding of these settlements being, with all these blue lines. These are all master plans that Mr. Smotrich, criminal Smotrich, he planned just to take over, and he declared 2025 as the sovereignty of Israel on the occupied territories. And these master plans allocated 50,000 housing units only in 2 years of the war. Israel considered the war as an opportunity to take over the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. So they have to be clear about it, that Israel, I'm not talking about only the genocide, but the fact that they try to build 50,000 housing units, approve them within 2 years' time, and having 66 new outposts, including an ultra-Orthodox outpost for the first time. That's by itself their political message that it is time for Israeli sovereignty. And you can see this settlement again, and how the Palestinian villages are just pushed they are just being pushed away, and it actually grab all their land for the benefit of these settlements. And this is the Gush Etzion area with the similar approach of the master planning, all these blue lines. And these blue lines, many of them have no settlements there, but just been declared a new settlement. And this is like Efrat, where everyone is talking about the E1, but there is E2. Can you see E2? E2 is just to block Bethlehem from any expansion to the south. You are blocking the city of Bethlehem and Beit Sahur from any expansion. And this is the only available land for Palestinians in this Bethlehem district. So E2 is similar to the E1, where they will block Palestinian contiguity. That's the purpose of E2. And this is Efrat settlement and how the empty surrounding will be used for. And this is again, and I will not go through all of these master plans, but again, this is the big story of success of Smotrich, and he declared that Palestinians will be concentrated within 15% of the West Bank. And these are the Palestinian major demographic concentrations in the West Bank, where 83% of the West Bank will be annexed to Israel. And this is his map, it's not my map. And again, this is he planned to push the Palestinians, and the title of this map is displacement. There's nothing else except displacement. Again, give me another 2 minutes to talk about Gaza and reconstruction, what Palestinians have in mind. And you see this is a recent master plan, recent map from a week ago, where 50% of the Gaza Strip is still under direct Israeli occupation. More than 40 military bases exist as a permanent bases in Gaza. In the news, you will talk about Trump plan, and as if Israel withdraw from from Gaza. It's not the case. There is 5 scenarios for the Gaza reconstruction. The scorched earth, this is what we are witnessing now, and I do believe it will continue. Israel every day across the yellow line, which is the 50% direct occupation of Gaza, they cross into inside Gaza and they demolish whatever structure exists, even today. Rebuilding home and space. For us, reconstruction is not the buildings, is to restore communities. So talking about Palestinians who were forced to leave in 1948, became refugees, were living in a tent, moved into a non-permanent structure, and then into a refugee camp, like a permanent buildings, and the way they build communities. So you have the Jaffa refugees living in one corner of the Shatta refugee camp. You have others coming from other communities. So people restore their memories and their being, their Nakba and being refugee from 48 into their spaces. And this is what's going to happen now. They are not waiting for donors. They are not waiting for the big money, not for infrastructure. No one is going to put any money if Israel will continue its direct occupation of Gaza and if there will be no Palestinian independent state. Let this be clear. No one will risk his money. You talk about $70 billion dollars needed for the reconstruction of Gaza to go at a similar level of what it used to exist before. But for us, resilient and basic services, basic infrastructure is another tool. A fourth scenario, which I think it's far from achieving, it's reconstruction towards statehood. This is not within the agenda of Trump. His plan does not mention any peace, not any statehood for the Palestinians, or just to have the global coalition, whether it is civil society or states, to continue its current pressure on Israel to recognize the Palestinian rights and their right for free Palestine and for a democratic, viable, vibrant Palestine. These are the 5 scenarios. I will not go and leave you this material, but again, the scorched earth reality, people are, they want to restore their communities and their even memorial. People are now trying to collect memories of their space before the war and to inject this into the new spaces that they want. They just rebuild the structure, the market, the mosque, the public space, the school, the permanent schools that exist. that's been, the case. Still, we don't give up. This is the master plan for 2050, Palestinian master plan, which includes Gaza and the West Bank. It's not approved yet, but when we talk about, Palestine 2050, this is the way we want to see new towns and new cities and new spaces, fully free from the restricted and from the margin of the planning that Israel left for us in more than 58 years of Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip and East Jerusalem. Thank you so much.